Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Angel and today I'll be sharing some more budget-friendly DIYs. This first project was inspired by this Nativity wall plaque that I found at Kirklands, and so I picked up this nativity scene from Dollar Tree, and then I'm also going to be using some tan cardstock and one of my thrifted gold frames that I've had for a while. So the first thing I did was just go ahead and paint everything in my nativity scene with some of my white chalk paint. And then while I set that aside to let it dry, I'm going to go ahead and make the music sheet using some of my Amazon stamps. I have everything linked below for you, but I'm also going to go ahead and use my Silent Night stamp that also came with that stamp set before starting to do my music sheet. Now I went ahead and did this whole sheet with this, and as I got toward the bottom, I started to make the ink a little lighter, kind of to mimic the Kirklands one. Then at the top, I decided it needed a little bit more of something to fill in those spaces, so I just used some of my other stamps there. Then once I had the page stamped, I went around the bassinet with some of my gold paint, and all I had to do was just glue these down to the music sheet. And I wanted to add, you could definitely just print off a music sheet for this project as well. This next project is inspired by these white beaded Christmas trees from Kirklands. So I grabbed two of Dollar Tree's 12-inch little wood pieces, and I'm going to go ahead and use my miter box saw. For the first one, I just cut a piece off the end of it, and for the second one, I actually cut this right in half and then used my miter box saw to cut the angles at the top and the bottom so that I could make this Christmas tree. Now, once I had everything cut down, I went ahead and glued together the Christmas tree frame first and let that dry completely. Then to connect the tree with the base, I'm going to be using this little dowel, and I went ahead and cut that down and then drilled holes in the bottom of the tree and the top of the base. Now I went ahead and used some wood glue and put the dowel down in the base and then set that aside to dry. And while that's drying, I'm going to use some of these little half beads. I got these on Amazon and I'll have them linked below for you, but this package comes with different sizes of half beads. So I kind of just messed around with it to see how best they would fit, and I ended up using some large ones, some medium ones, and some of the small ones. Then I just went around with some of my Gorilla hot glue and glued all of these beads down to my Christmas tree frame. And once I had all the beads glued down, I went ahead and used some more wood glue to connect the stand to the Christmas tree. Then I just let that dry for about 24 hours before giving this whole thing one coat of my white chalk paint. Now I did end up having to go back in with a smaller brush to get in between those beads where I just couldn't reach with my larger brush. Then the final step for this project was just using one of my really large fluffy brushes and dry brushing some of my antiquing wax over this whole thing. This next project is inspired by these Anthropologie snow globe candles that I thought were so cute. I actually had an old candle holder and I actually use this to hold my wax cubes now, but I thought that would be perfect for this project. And I also got a Dollar Tree snow globe with some of their little Christmas trees, and I went ahead and just glued those down to the bottom of the snow globe. Now, instead of faux snow, I'm actually using some Dollar Tree white sand for the snow in my snow globe. So I put a little bit down in there, and then I just put my snow globe all back together. together. I wanted to cover the little bottom white part of the snow globe, so I'm just using some of my Amazon gold velvet ribbon, and I'm gonna wrap this all around the bottom of it. Now, since my ribbon was a little thin, I ended up going around this twice. Now, I wanted to be able to remove this after Christmas or winter, so I just used some of Dollar Tree's little Velcro tabs to attach this to the top of my lid. This project is inspired by this Kirklands snow globe art, and if you watched this video right here, you know that I made this scroll from Dollar Tree shipping paper, and I had this little piece left over, so I thought I would use this to make the snow globe art. Now, just like I did in my other video, I'm just going to roll the bottom of this up a little bit so that it will have some weight to it when I hang this and it won't roll upward. Then I'm going to go ahead and add a line of hot glue on each side so that it also can't roll downward. Then to make the snow globe, I'm just going to use a plate, and I'm very lightly drawing around it with a pencil just so I know where to stay within the boundaries. Then I'm going to go ahead and use my pencil to draw out a few trees, and then I'll go back in with some white paint over top of these. Now, you could definitely do black just like the Kirklands ones. I just thought this would look really cute with some white paint. Then, like I said, I'm just taking a small brush and I'm going to go in with some of my white chalk paint and paint over all of my pencil lines. It did take about 2 coats to totally cover the pencil lines on some of these. Some of these only just needed 1 coat. Now, once I finished all my trees, I just flipped my paintbrush over and I'm using the end of it to just make all the little snowflakes. And I'm making sure that I'm putting enough so that you'll be able to tell that this is a globe, because once I finish, I'm going to go ahead and erase the pencil line that I made around this. And I'm making sure that I'm putting the snowflakes right next to that line that I made as well. I also added in just a few larger snowflakes just in random places. Then once I was finished, like I said, I went around the circle where I had made that pencil line and I just erased the whole thing. Now, for the bottom of the snow globe on the Kirklands one, they had "Believe" under there for the bottom. I left that out and decided to just use this Dollar Tree stencil to make the bottom of my snow globe. Now, you could do yours just like the Kirklands one, but I wanted to be able to keep this out after Christmas, so I just decided to leave that out. Then once I had that finished, I just wanted to add a little more to the bottom of this snow globe. So I'm just using my ruler and my white paint marker, and I'm drawing a line, and then again I'm using the end of my paintbrush to make a few little dots, and then I will draw one more line up under there. And that was it for this project. All I had to do was just add a piece of rope at the top so that I could hang this. This next project is inspired by these Pottery Barn wooden nutcrackers, and this is so simple. I found these nutcrackers. They're actually DIY nutcrackers, and I got these at Family Dollar. It's kind of like a Dollar Tree Plus that has the same things, and I think either Family Dollar owns Dollar Tree or vice versa, but either way, all I had to do for these was just water down some of my antiquing wax and stain these up. This next project is inspired by this Kirklands Mary wall plaque, and I found this little wall plaque at my local thrift store. It was blue, so I just went ahead and gave this about 2 or 3 coats of my white chalk paint. And then to make this look like wood, I'm just going to take a wet rag and some of my antiquing wax, and I'm going to rub this all over this plank. Then once it was all dry, I'm just going to be using this stencil. This was part of the stencil package that I got from Amazon, and I'll have it linked below for you. But I'm going to go ahead and cut out the little Mary part just so that I can use that piece for this. Then I just went ahead and used some painter's tape to secure this down where I wanted it. And then I'm going to take some Mod Podge and go over my whole stencil. I like to do this anytime I'm using a stencil that doesn't stick down, and this just helps so that there's no paint bleed underneath. And then I just went in with 2 coats of my white chalk paint over the stencil. And that was really it for this. It was so easy and super quick to do. Another super easy dupe to make is this brass Nutcracker ornament from Crate and Barrel. Now I had this little Nutcracker left over from the Target dollar spot from my last video when I made the little candle holder with the other Nutcracker. So I decided to just go ahead and use this to make a little brass ornament. So I'm just going to go ahead and give this 1 coat of my black chalk paint. And then once it was dry, I'm just going to go in with some of this rub and buff. I got this one from Amazon, and I'm using the color European Gold. I will have this link below for you, but it does come with these little applicators. So I decided to just go in and kind of use this all over this Nutcracker. I did use a little bit more on his hat because I wanted it to be more gold, but then for the rest of him, I'm just barely tapping this onto there. If you've never used rub and buff before, a little dab goes a very long way. So it was just 1 small coat of this on the Nutcracker. And then once I had it all on there, I did go back in with a really soft microfiber cloth and just buff this out. And then finally, I just added this little eye hook to the top of my Nutcracker with some velvet ribbon to hang him. This next project is inspired by these Pottery Barn bells, and I know I've already made bells, but I really wanted to make some bigger ones so that I could sit them on a shelf. Now I ended up making 2 of these bells. They're kind of different, so just stick around so you can see both of them. But for the first one, I'm just using a Dollar Tree plastic cup and then 1 of these little toy foam balls, and I went ahead and cut this. It's not totally in half. I'm actually using about 1/4 of the ball for this one, and then the other half will be used on my other one. So I just went ahead and hot glued that little piece of ball to the top of the cup, and it was still just a little bigger than the top of the cup. So what I did was just take some hot glue and put it right on the edge and then tuck this ball down under itself. And don't worry about the hot glue showing because this is all going to get covered up. Now, I wish I could take total credit for this idea, but I actually saw something similar on Pinterest. I don't know who the original poster was, but they used Dollar Tree plastic containers, like the food containers, and then 1 of the half foam circles on top, which you could totally do for this project, or just cut 1 of the whole circles in half. Now here, what I'm doing is I started out by wanting to just put some spackling where the ball and the cup meet to kind of cover up where I had hot glued it. But then I decided I was going to put a little bit of spackling over this whole thing so that I could really make this bell look old, antique, and vintage. And these bells are supposed to look metal, so I thought this would probably help it look a little corroded and just really old and aged. Now, if you wanted to, you could definitely skip this step if you don't like the way that this looks, and you'll be able to see when I do my second bell, I actually skipped this whole part for that one, and you'll be able to see the difference between the two. I let that dry for a few hours, and then I mixed up some of my white chalk paint with some baking soda, and I'm gonna give this whole thing one good coat of that, and it's just gonna give this bell even more texture. Then I went in with a sponge brush and some of my black chalk paint, and I'm just very randomly putting a few spots of this black paint on there, and then I'm gonna mix up some of my metallic gold paint, metallic antique gold paint, and some of my copper, and I'm gonna paint over this whole thing. And as you can see where I painted the black spots, it kind of shows through this metallic paint, which is exactly what I wanted. Now I will admit that when I did this first coat, I should have just left it alone because it was turning out really perfect. The colors were blending so nicely, and I just for some reason didn't leave it alone, and I actually went through about 3 different coats of trying to paint this and deciding that I didn't like it, and I should have just stuck with the first coat that I did, and then I had to keep trying to get that same color back. And you may have noticed that I totally forgot to put the little top piece on this bell before I painted it, so I did have to go back in and add that. Originally, I cut off a piece from a paper towel roll, but then I decided it wasn't sturdy enough, so I actually ended up using the roll from some aluminum foil. And then here, I am just going back in and taking some of my antiquing wax and just putting a little bit in some random places, and then I would just use a paper towel to wipe off a bit of the excess. I also just went in with some more of my black paint, and I just put a little dab on my finger, and then I would wipe my finger off and just kind of go over all those spots that I did before. Then finally for this bell, all I had to do was just add a little piece of rope at the top. Now for my second bell, I had this little tin can. I've had this for a few years. I got it back at Christmas time. These are the little vanilla stir sticks for your coffee. And I've kept this can, and it ended up being perfect for another bell because the other piece of that ball fit perfectly on the bottom of this. So I just hot glued that right to the top, and then I'm gonna go ahead and again mix some white paint with some baking soda, and I'm gonna do 2 coats on this whole thing, and I am skipping the spackling for this one. Now, just like with the other bell, I went in and added a few little black spots in random places, and this time I remembered to glue on the little handle up top before I finished painting all of this. Then I'm going back in again with a mixture of antique gold, regular gold, and copper to paint this entire thing. And once it was dry, I'm just again going to be using a small brush and some of my antiquing wax to add a few spots to my bell, and then I'll just use my finger to kind of brush off the excess. And then in all those spots where I had added black before, I'm going to go in just with my finger and barely dab a little more over top of there. Then all I had to do was just add the rope to the top of this. And that is going to be it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.